In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.
We're both here. I'm not used to having clinical psychologists on the podcast, and perhaps you're not used to being on shows that focus on larger-than-life rock and roll personalities. But we find ourselves here because I'm not only interested in your work, but you yourself have shown some interest in my boss, particularly the Welcome to My Nightmare album. And I initially saw an interview with Howard Bloom where you talked a little bit about Welcome to My Nightmare. What was that experience? What was it about that album that interested you about Alice?
Well, when that album came out, I was a kid. You know, I was about 14, I think. And it was shocking. I remember I first heard it. I remember when I first heard any of it, I was delivering papers in my small town, and this stoned girl was listening to it, and it was really intriguing. But it's quite a powerful album, and especially for someone that young, you know, it's a real dramatic piece. There's a couple of songs on it that were designed to be hits on the radio, which was typical for concept albums of that time. You know, the concept album would be the entire album and all the songs would fit together thematically, but there'd often be a song or two that was designed for AM radio to push the album forward. And if I remember correctly, Welcome to My Nightmare had at least one of those on there, but the rest of it was, well, a whole dramatic world. And it was the investigation of nightmarish fantasy. And it scared me. The album really scared me to begin with.
Of a boy named Stephen.
Yes. It took me a while to get over that. It was shocking and frightening both at the same time. But it's brilliantly arranged and it bears repeated listening. I think it's one of the outstanding albums of the 1970s. It came out in the it definitely came out in the 1970s, in the mid
75.
Right. And so it had heavy competition because there were a lot of great albums in the 70s, but it definitely withstands the test of time in my estimation. And it does draw you into this whole dramatic world, and great musical artists have their universes. I shouldn't say little universes. They have their conceptual universes. There's a Beatles land, you know, and it's populated by marching bands and animated characters and Monty Python-like comedy. And Tom Waits has his own dramatic universe, and it's always 3:00 in the morning and you're hungover and the garbage cans are clanking around outside. And, you know, maybe you have a foul taste in your mouth about what happened last night, but, it's really something to be able to climb into those worlds. And it's really something for teenagers. It helps them explore the dramatic world. And
I think that was one of Bob Ezrin and Alice Cooper's collaborations. One of the first collaborations that really got into that concept album, because Bob Ezrin, fellow Canadian, went on to produce The Wall and many other, you know, huge classic albums as well. But Welcome to My Nightmare sort of started that all. And I'm looking at us and I'm thinking, wow, we have the same musical background, because I'm a couple of years younger. Your class is 79, I want to say. I'm class of 83. So you would have been basically a senior when I was a freshman coming into high school in that sense. But that meant we still had a lot of those classic rock influences, I think.
You look better for wear than I do. I think I would have pegged you as younger than that. Maybe it's the lighting. I hope I'm going to blame it.
Oh, it's all lighting. It's smoke and mirrors. Okay. It's rock and roll, smoke and mirrors. You look great, Jordan, by the way.
It's an illusion.
Well, I was going to say, you know, one of my gotcha questions was going to be, you know, who took whose haircut, you or Bill Maher? Did you take his or did he?
Yeah, well, it's been hard to get a haircut up here in COVID locked in Canada, so in Toronto. So,
well, you're in Toronto now, but you grew up in Alberta, and I want to say that I do know Medicine Hat. I believe that's in Alberta.
Yeah, it's about 700 miles south of where I grew up. So,
yeah, well, a lot of people don't realize that you did a lot of hard labor up there in the great great white hope of the North. And I live in Stockholm, Sweden, so I know my share of snow in April as well. So,
God, we had snow August 6th one year when I was taking swimming lessons.
well, you know, the name actual Jordan B. Peterson as well. I'm familiar with the B. Maybe some people don't know in our chat and our fans. By the way, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel right now. We have Dr. Jordan Peterson with us. What is the B? It's for Bernt, which is a Nordic name. I want to say it's Norwegian.
Yes, it is. It's my great-grandfather's name. Yeah.
What about the other classic rock bands besides Alice? And because you're from Canada, I grew up in the Bay Area. Was Rush, Triumph, were any of those bands big as they were in my little world of California? Were they as big in Canada?
Rush was big. I wasn't a Rush fan. And I wasn't a Triumph fan either, but those bands both were big. In the 70s, I really liked Supertramp, especially Crime of the Century, which is brilliantly arranged and unbelievably well produced and very melodic, and it bears re-listening. Crime of the Century was a great album too. And they were really popular in Alberta, Supertramp, for one reason or another. Obviously Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon, pretty much all the Led Zeppelin albums that came out in the 70s were major smash hits at that point. Doors, it was funny, back in the 70s, you'll remember this, and I suppose this was true until the internet kicked in. Any music that was more than a couple of years old was old. Yeah, and you couldn't really find it often. Like it sort of disappeared into the distance. It wasn't being played all the time. You couldn't access it all the time. You couldn't find the records even. And so a 10-year-old band was really old in the 1970s. Maybe among 25-year-old people, that's still the case. But now music is just there everywhere all the time. And my son listened to music from the 1920s right through, well, whatever time happened to be current when we were listening to music, and all those temporal barriers to listening to recorded music were all gone because of the internet. So that was quite cool.
I always wonder if you think that perhaps the technology that's opened so many doors for music and it actually opens my eyes to a bunch of new bands. I find new bands every day by just going down a playlist rabbit hole. But does it always close the doors as well? Because back then we would have to do the research. We really did have to go out. If you liked a band, you had to go out and search for them and find the one magazine that would come out a month to hopefully find maybe some words about them. Now you can just go on the internet and find out their net worth.
Right, and everything else. Well, technology has changed other aspects of musical recording, popular music recording too, because it's decreased the importance of concept albums, for example, because the single tends to be the unit of production, even more than it was back before the net. People who were listening to music, I suppose, seriously, more than Top 100 AM, would really get into a full album. I mean, I used to sit around with my friends when a new album came out, especially one that was rather complex. So that may be typically a Pink Floyd album or something like that, or a Led Zeppelin album, which you often had to get accustomed to through multiple re-listenings. We'd listen to the whole album and assess it and analyze it, and to the degree that we were capable. But it was an album-oriented experience, and of course all the graphics that came along with the album were also were also an important part of that experience. So it was more theatrical, I would say. It was more of a theatrical experience than just listening to a single. And a lot of, well, you lose something because of that. You gain this incredible access to every form of music at your fingertips, and that's really something. But
with Alice Cooper, did you ever see him live during those days, or was it just that sort of step away, listening to Welcome to My Nightmare and being a little bit, trepid of what you're actually going to see?
Well, he also had quite a reputation. I mean, Cooper's stage persona and his shows were notorious. I never saw a live Alice Cooper show, but all sorts of rumors circulated about what he did on his shows or what he did in his personal life, and that sort of added to the mystique. And he was a controversial character, to say the least, and that added to some of the trepidation and fear that surrounded the Welcome to My Nightmare album as well. So I suppose that's all part of what made it somewhat exciting. But for me, it was the music that was paramount. I think Welcome to My Nightmare was brilliant conceptually and really unbelievably creative and well arranged and well produced. And so that's also extremely nice. I mean, that's one thing. I don't know what you think about this, but I think some of the production that was done in the 1970s has never been exceeded or even paralleled. I seldom hear a band recording now where the arrangements are so brilliantly laid out in the stereo landscape and so carefully delineated, note by note and instrument by instrument. Those people were technical masters.
There was no cut and paste. The thing that I say that's different from the way I grew up listening to music, starting to record music, and then ultimately being able to play it for a living is that when I first started, I needed to learn the song from the beginning to the end. And then all the parts in between, you had to break down. You couldn't just copy paste a part that you thought was cool in the front of the song and then paste it into the end of the song. You had to play the entire song front to back. And, as recording went on, now I'm used to playing a song, recording it, and then only having to record a verse and a chorus because the other stuff can be sort of copy pasted and then it goes on. And it's a really good point that you make, because I think it should go back to a more analog sort of mentality. Even though we have such great technology, you can make great technology, things can go quicker, because obviously you don't want to be recording vocals the way we did back in the 1980s and 90s with tape, because it would take too long to actually get the vocal performance down. But at the same time, I do feel that having that time to really break down a song strengthened the music.
And what do you think about on the technical end? I mean, do you feel that recording techniques and arranging techniques, the quality of published music now, do you think that on average it's better than it was in the 70s with the more analog equipment? Or
I think all the digital equipment tries to model what an analog equipment can do. I understand that there's certain things and certain styles of music that have actually benefited from it. For instance, whatever disco is today probably sound, even maybe not though, because I think disco had a little bit more soul. I know you're not a big fan of disco, but I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up on AM radio. I had rock and roll and disco and funk and soul kind of all meshed into one on an AM radio, KFRC. I'm not sure if Alberta had that or, growing up, but I definitely had a huge spectrum of music growing up. And by the way, I got to say, there's so many Canadian bands that I really do appreciate. And I know that you like, I know that you've mentioned Tom Waits before, but
I really liked Arcade Fire.
Yeah, Arcade Fire, you said, and there was a couple other bands. Did you ever get into Sloan from Canada?
No,
Sloan
no, I don't know. When you get older, as you know, it's young people who kind of keep you on the cutting edge of musical appreciation for whatever reason that is. Maybe, I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe they have the time, or they have the time and the interest, or maybe it actually is an age-related phenomenon. But my kids also alerted me to all sorts of bands that I wouldn't have found on my own. But I really like Arcade Fire. I think they're absolutely brilliant. They've produced some albums that are so good that it's really difficult to believe.
I think you had said something about a band called Beach House as well as Devotchka as well.
Devotchka, I like Devotchka. It's haunting. Yeah. It's got this Eastern European waltz thing going that's really quite interesting, and the lead singer's great.
I know your son plays music as well, right?
Yeah, he's got a couple of songs online. Julian Peterson. Yeah, he's got a really good voice, and it's been great to listen to him sing. It's a real pleasure. He comes over and plays the piano or the guitar, and we sing together, and I love that. It's so great. I would love more than anything else, I think, to be able to sing. I can't really imagine that there's anything more fun. That's not the right, that's such a weak word, fun. Because music is way, whatever music is, it's much more than just fun. It's
Right.
great. And to be able to participate in producing it, it involves your whole body. You dance to it, you sync your musculature to it. It changes your perceptions. When you're singing, you're immersed in that patterned, rhythmic, harmonious landscape. It's so, it
Transcendental.
seems like such a healthy and great thing to do. I'd love to be able to do it. I'm not good at it, unfortunately.
I think there's a lot of Jordan B. Peterson fans that would like to hear you sing on a song, sing on a record, sing some sort of rock record.
Well, one of the things that's funny, there's this character. First of all, I did release a song on TikTok.
Did you now? All right. Vic, do you have a clip of that? Can you put that up? Vic?
Oh God, don't do that. I sang the Philosopher's Song from Monty Python, which is about all these philosophers on a drunken binge, and it's a very comical song. And I put it on TikTok because I was bored out of my skull one day and thought that I'd do something completely different to use Monty Python speak. And so that's up there.
I'm Ryan Roxie, and I've taken all my years of experience of playing guitar, and I want to pass the torch of rock and roll on to you. Check out the System 12 Guitar Method.